Score big with a Sagicor Bank mortgage. It's easy. Find your property, apply for your Sagicor Bank mortgage, get your keys in no time, and you're home. Get a competitive interest rate, a line of credit up to $2 million, which you can use for any purpose, including home renovation, purchasing new furniture, or maybe installing a solar power system, plus a special rate on home insurance. Score big with a Sagicor Bank mortgage. Apply for yours today. Call 888-SAGICOR.
Good morning. It's a morning wedding. I'm not too sure that I'm that fond of morning weddings because you really have to get up early. But at least I'm dressed up, ready to go, and welcome to the Jamaica Observer webinar I Do, Part 1. Co-host today is Alicia Moulton White. She's dressed up too.
Yes, it's a morning wedding.
It's a morning wedding. And
which I'm not fond of either, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, but the moment we walked in and saw the decor created by Shakima Hines, it made me feel so much better. So welcome. Today is Tuesday, March 29th, and it's about 10:01 now, and we are ready to welcome the bride. But as you know, thank you, by the way, Lisa, since today's webinar is powered by you.
Yes, it's only natural because from birth to the wedding day to thereafter to the grave, we'll be with you financially.
There you have it. Financially, of course. You're not going to haunt us. Okay, fine. Okay, so we have an amazing panel. We're going to have an amazing panel discussion because we've got amazing panelists. We've got Vinny, all things rings, Bijou, and Vinny Kopalani is the expert on all things rings. He's a sales manager at Bijou. We have Shakima Hines. If you read, if you're not reading the Observer every Tuesday style, and reading Shakima Hines' columns, you really are missing out on a lot. Plus, you need to rise in style every Tuesday with Tuesday Style. So, Shakima Hines, Managing Director of Shakima Hines Events Concierge, will be speaking to you too. Aisha Panton, Event Designer Principal of Puss Backfoot. Yes, you heard it, Puss Backfoot, dress to Puss Backfoot. Yeah, she's on too. Oji Jaja, Executive Culinary Artist. If you call yourself an executive culinary artist, and he is, by the way, you're in for a special dining experience, especially whenever you see him. We also have Camille Flynn, that's Flynn with an M, Principal of Cake Couture Jamaica. What's a wedding without a cake? And Carlton Brown. Yeah, we're saying yes to the suit first before we say yes to the dress. So Carlton Brown is with us. He's a bespoke tailor, and he is going to tell us how to dress, how your husband to be, your bridegroom, should look, and how you, the groom, the groomsman, everybody, father of the bride, father of the groom, should look on your special day. Last but not least, the importance of an attorney. I'm sure as we speak, everybody in Hollywood has everybody on speed dial. Here in Kingston, Jamaica, at our lifestyle webinar I Do, we have attorney at law Annalisa Lindsay, ready to speak to us about pre and post. Who knew? But, beginning is about the ring and the end is about the prenup. So stick around, don't move. Trust me, if you move, remember when you got up suddenly on Sunday and you missed, well, don't move. Okay, thank you, welcome. We are first of all going to introduce Vinny's amazing place where he wakes up every single day. Yeah, rumor has it he actually has a bed by those rings. So video number 1 from Bijou and the engagement ring. What's a wedding without the ring?
Artlist.io. Music licensing reimagined. Artlist.io. Music licensing reimagined. Artlist.io. Music licensing reimagined.
Vinny Copolani is the sales manager at Bijou. So let's go straight to you, Vinny, and ask you who really pays for the ring. I say this, Vinny, because there are some people, they find me and they say to me that the ring that the gentleman bought is not fancy enough, Vinny, and they had reason to come back to you and readjust. Do you do the adjustments before, Vinny, or afterwards? Who buys the ring, Vinny?
Well, as Nobi already has said my name about 18 times, I'm Vinny. I'm the sales manager of Bijou. I welcome all the panelists. Thank you for having me here. Well, the perfect way to put it, the gentleman definitely pays for the ring. He's the one who can pop the question. And nowadays, it goes both ways. Even the lady pops the question of, would you marry me? And the ring definitely plays a huge part in the wedding ceremony.
Well,
and finding the ring is very important.
And what are the key? I mean, how do you find the perfect? How do you find the perfect ring, Vinny? I mean, first things first. You watch the weddings, you watch all these lovely clips, and the ring always just gently slides on the ring finger. What's the process? How do you know your ring size, first and foremost? Because if it's a surprise, Vinny, how come the ring always fits?
Sure. The gentleman has to do a lot of work. We guys normally have to do a lot of work, making sure the family is involved, the friends are involved, the friends giving you an idea what the size is. Maybe a female friend takes the girl to a jewelry store and gets her measurement done. And we have a lot of girls come in with their friends just to get their measurements taken, so the friend can go and tell the husband-to-be that this is her finger size. And that's when he takes charge of getting the ring looked after in the perfect size.
And I know that you probably had to readjust quite a few rings though, Vinny, so you can do that.
Yes, sometimes the male wants to surprise, and we always give them an assurance that no matter what the size is, we will look after them before and after the sale. And we can do that.
What's the average ring size?
Average ring size is a 7. So it's approximately from a 6.5 to a 7, I would say.
Okay, fine. Now, when the guy decides to buy the ring, Vinny, you know, how does it work? Because of course, you know, Vinny, we need the bigger, the better. I saw Lisa looking at her rings as
Yes.
as we.
While the feature was happening, I was looking at my ring. You know, I would do with a 15th anniversary upgrade, actually.
What size diamond should he buy to impress Vinny? I mean, you know, you're getting engaged, you're going to go down on one knee, you know, songs are going to be singing in the, you know, you can hear songs in the background, birds might be chirping, you know.
It's always told that the ring price should be the gentleman's 3 months salary.
Oh,
That's what I've heard over and over.
is that true though? But I guess it depends on
Well-
how much he takes home every month.
Right. So it all blends down to what his capacity of budget is and what the gentleman can afford in the rightful way, and his partner being a happy camper when she gets it, and she knows that she's going to be the life partner for him the rest of her life.
And how does he go about choosing the diamond now, Vinny? Take over for me.
Diamonds come in different, first sizes, then you go into the quality, then you have the colors. So the best desirable diamond in our business is round brilliant cut diamonds, which are round in shape. And then the second one is the princess cut diamond. And then you have a little bit different to a princess cut would be a cushion cut. And then you have emerald cuts, then you have pear-shaped diamonds. So you have multiple shapes of diamonds, and then you have multiple settings. So first the person has to choose if it's going to be a white gold, yellow gold, rose gold, or platinum. That's where we go from. And with God's graces, we carry all color golds and all shapes and size of diamonds.
What's the hottest color right now?
A color would be a G color is one of the hottest color, and the hottest shape would be a cushion cut.
Yes, we've noticed that. Okay, so how do you advise? I mean, do people tend to come in, you know, I'm sure the guys when they come in, I'm sure they're quite nervous, Vinny. You know, quite nervous because, you know, first of all, you're going to frighten them and tell them that it should be 3 months, that, you know, an average 3-month paycheck. Some people would want a year, but how do you go around, you know, coaxing and encouraging and suggesting?
We always try to find the rightful budget with the rightful style, what the gentlemen are desiring, and with the homework done by the gentleman, with the family members' help or the friends' help, knowing what she likes as a material or the color of the gold content would be in yellow gold or white gold. And we try to find the perfect ring from him to her.
Okay, tell us about...
That's always budget related.
Tell us, Vinny, about the one occasion, because I'm sure it's only one that you've ever had, when the fiancé actually came back with the ring because she didn't like it, or he didn't like it.
We have had, I remember the occasion when the fiancé did not like it, and then we are quite open to let the fiancé come and choose the ring, and you know, with God's with the budget involved, if the gentleman can pay the difference, we are more than happy to help them to create that moment within the store. And I actually have opened up champagne, you know, many a times to create that beautiful moment of time.
Oh, that's lovely, Vinny.
Okay.
I was waiting for you to, to talk about, popping the champagne as well as the thing. But Alicia just clutched her pearls because obviously, you see, this is the reality, Vinny. The gentleman might have a perception, but the woman in question has her reality. And, when she's on IG and she's seeing all these chicksters with these bling rings and everything, that's what she wants, Vinny. So
I quite love the fact that you change rings and pop champagne for the changing of the ring, signifying the woman has gotten what she wanted. I love that.
Yes.
I love that.
Well, trust me, when you go to Bijou, you are always satisfied.
Yes.
Too satisfied, perhaps, but satisfaction guaranteed. Thank you, Vinny. Thank you, Vinny. We're going to come back to you because, we have several questions for you, but we're going to come back to you. Let's move now to Shakima Hines, who's the Managing Director of Shakima Hines Events Concierge. And we're going to take a look at what she does when she's not physically on location.
Hello, I'm Shakima. I'm a wedding planner and designer, and I have been fortunate enough to work in different aspects of the wedding industry, and I realize that wedding planning is truly my passion. Congratulations on your engagement! I'm going to tell you the 5 tips that you need to get started with your wedding planning process. So the number one and the first thing that you need to do is to enjoy being engaged. It's all the reasons in the world to celebrate, showcase it on your social media, tell your family, your friends. Enjoy the moment of this new experience and journey that you're going to embark on. So the next step, and one of the most important steps you need to take, is setting a budget. And this is like super important. There are many ways that you can set your budget. You can determine what you are willing and comfortable for the overall spend of your wedding, or you can prioritize and allot a certain spend to each aspect of your wedding. For example, how much you'd like to spend on the floral rentals and decor, how much you'd like to spend on food and beverage, and just different aspects of the day. The next step, and this is the fun part, is setting your vision. What do you want your wedding to look like? How do you want your guests to feel? How are you going to portray as a couple what your personality is throughout the celebration of your wedding? The next thing, and it's going to be interesting, is set your guest count. How many people are you inviting to your wedding? And my recommendation for the best way to find out is to actually sit down with your fiancé and write out the names of the persons you'd like to invite to the wedding. That way you'll know the number of persons that you are expecting or you would like to attend the wedding. That will set the tone for getting quotations from your caterer. You will know how many chairs that you need to rent, the capacity of your venue. You can't determine if the venue is right for you if you have no idea how many guests you're inviting. Now that you've gotten those things out of the way, you choose your venue. So you know how much you're willing to spend on the space, you know what the vision and the theme and the feel for your wedding is, and you have narrowed down your guest count, so now you know the capacity that you require. When you pick your venue, make sure that everything that we just discussed in the first 4 steps are ideal for the venue you choose. Do a site visit, look at the spaces, get a feel for it, and that will be the next step in determining all the final details. Now that you know the top things that you need to do, I'd like for you to consider hiring a wedding planner, because a wedding planner has maybe a couple weddings under their belt, and take it from me, experience teaches wisdom. They will be able to guide you throughout the steps and maybe take a lot of the work off of your shoulders. They'll be able to give you recommendations, guide you on etiquette and protocols. And you know, wedding goes far beyond. You need to look at your food and beverage, beauty, your caterers, the wedding dress. The most important thing about planning your wedding is to remember that it's a celebration of your love and your day. It's about love, it's about romance and telling your story. So just ensure that no matter what you do, it's a reflection of who you are as a couple and the new journey of the life that you're about to embark on.
Oh, we're absolutely loving our morning wedding. You know, first of all, the importance of finding the right ring. You know, Vinny has popped the champagne. After that, you go to Shakima, who's given us a taste of things to come. You'd understand why we're sitting with Sagicor, because you see, notice Vinny did say 3 months. I'm not, you know, we'll ask Shakima now, like, how many months' salary, Shakima, are we talking about? Vinny suggested 3 for the ring. That's just the engagement ring. You should see the face of my cameraman over here. So take us further into the situation now, Shakima.
Morning to the panelists, which I'm more than delighted to be amongst these awesome wedding professionals. The most important thing to do is sit with your fiance and the family, those who are important to you, to just determine what the concept of your day will be. And you need to determine how many persons you're having, and that's how you're going to start determining what you're willing and able to spend on your wedding. A lot of people don't realize that the more people you have is the more your wedding is going to cost.
You think?
So the guest list is super important. They want the big wedding and everything, but they don't realize that you're paying per person for each element of the wedding, more or less.
Okay, so roughly, if we don't want a lot of people, we only want 1,000.
Most persons say it's helpful when you budget at least, let's say, about $60,000 to $70,000 per person that you plan to invite
Per person. So
wedding.
okay, so we won't go to 30 to 1,000 people. We'll go to 50. Yes. Sorry. Go ahead.
Right. And then you can calculate up from there. And that's how most persons, that's what I would recommend in setting your budget. That would pretty much cover what their slice of cake would be, what their meal would be, their portion of the table and chair that you're renting to decor, and then you multiply up from there.
Shakima, that's a really good way, I
Yes.
think, of doing this. I mean, a lot of persons, in my experience, I've attended many weddings, and I've seen people discussing it, and they're constantly talking about the per plate is how they want
Yes.
to calculate how they do their wedding budget.
Right.
Per plate, but the chair costs, the
table
floral
cloth,
arrangement on the table
the
costs,
napkin.
whether or not it's 10 people at that table or 6
Exactly.
people at that, all of that costs. So that's a
Because
really
they're-
good way
they're
to
all-
look at it, I find.
Right, because all the little things add up. They're getting a menu card, that's a cost that multiplies up. There is the cocktail or the 3 or 4 glasses of wine that they're going to consume on the day. That also adds up. You know, you have a dessert station, and then there's also a slice of cake. That adds up to the entire experience of the day. I'm sure a portion of that dance floor that they're going to dance on, that
Sure,
determines
each
the size
tile.
of the dance floor,
Correct.
is also a factor to the overall budget and spend.
Okay. So that said, who actually pays for this, Shakima? I've got quite a few questions. Who's paying for this? Once upon a time, you know, it was automatically the bride's side of the family. But
Right.
today, does that still apply today? Who actually pays for these things?
Well, as you said, traditionally it's the parents of the bride that generally pays for the wedding. We're living in such a modern times these days that everyone and each couple is tweaking the wedding to be their own. The demographic of today's modern couple, their budget far exceeds what their parents probably could have previously paid for their own wedding maybe 20, 30 years ago, or what their parents are actually making and able to contribute. So what I'm seeing these days is a shared budget. So whereas let's say the bride's family can afford it, then they naturally take the lead where that's concerned. And I've seen there are a lot of frugal brides out there that they don't want to seem, let's call it, too flashy. So they would have their parents pay for a portion, but them and their fiance will contribute to certain elements of the wedding that are not the must-haves, but things that they would like to have. They tend to cover that cost themselves. And the groom's family, we're seeing multiple day events. So we have like the groom's family paying for a rehearsal or welcome event, or the brunch the day after. So the cost is spread across the board. So there are those who are hard and fast on traditions, and they're the modern take on it where everybody picks in one cocoa full basket.
Okay. Okay. We'll come back to you, Shakima. So don't worry, we're going to come back to you because we have to go back to Vinny too, because don't forget, we've only got the diamond from the engagement ring. We haven't bought the bloody wedding ring yet. Aisha Panton is the event designer and principal for Spackfoot. Sit back and enjoy her wedding experience that she'd love to share with you. Dear friend who has just sent me a WhatsApp, allow me to immediately allay all fears. Yes, everything's done in Jamaica by Jamaicans. Exquisite, so there is no need for you to fly anybody in to Jamaica to create your wedding. We have everybody here, and this one of the reasons why we are sharing I Do Part 1, because individuals, some people, you know, for some strange reason think that, you know, you have to fly externals in to create this. It's created on island by Aisha Panton. Now, the only thing that I would like to ask Aisha is this: how long and how many times am I allowed to change my mind? Well, you know, a bride, you know, I mean, okay, fine. She can go back to Vinny and say, I don't want that, I want a bloody bigger diamond. Okay, how many times can a bride-to-be change her mind?
I mean, everything is going to come down to, good morning, everybody. I'm Aisha. Thanks so much for having me here, and welcome to everyone joining us. Thanks for tuning in. A bride can change her mind quite a few times if we have enough time. But there's going to come a point where I would say 3 months out, I don't want to be like creating a new concept. We need to be fine-tuning, mobilizing, getting ready. One of the ways that I work is the work is very like personalized and custom. It doesn't exist. It's being made a lot of the time. So we have to spend some time creating. So can't be changing too often after a particular point once we get started. And that's why actually I think I have a reputation of taking a long time, and I do, because actually I want to spend some time with us getting to know each other. You know, like there is an initial excitement, oh, I'm getting married, and you know, everybody runs to the Pinterest board, or they've been saving and working on this Pinterest board from long before they were even engaged. And then
Guilty.
I literally just had dinner with a young person, and she's very young, like she's just getting into college now, and she already is working on her Pinterest board for her wedding. So, you know, she doesn't even have a boyfriend right now, but she's already planning her wedding. So people are like, you know, it's, I want to get married, and you know, we're in this age where there's all of this information and all of these beautiful images.
Yes.
And so everyone starts collecting. But what happens during that time is that you're like grabbing onto everything, but you're not necessarily focusing on what you really want, what really looks like you, how you want to celebrate your day. So I like to spend some time getting rid of what you see everywhere, what your mommy and daddy want you to have, what your friends think. Like I spend a lot of time trying to get rid of all of those distractions and have my couples focus on what they want, what looks like them, how they want to present themselves, and the kind of experience they want to give to their guests.
But when you show us that, for example, how difficult is it for you for a bride to be and her bridegroom not to be distracted by all of the wonderful things that, you know, they went to this one's wedding the other day and this is what I saw, you know, I opened vows and I saw this, I want that. So how do you kind of get them focused? Because people do want a little bit of what they see elsewhere, surely.
Absolutely, and I actually encourage them to send me as many things as they want, and I even say it doesn't have to be wedding decor. You could like a book, you could like a tile, you could like a plant. It doesn't really matter what it is. Send me every single thing that you love, that inspires you, and I spend some time with us being back and forth in terms of what you like, and I just take it all in. And you know, I think that's why you pay me, to pick the pieces and to bring it all together for you. So we spend time in that phase, and then I create a concept based on all of the information that I've gathered, and I try to present it in a way that I think you would love it. And so far, you know, it's worked.
So, you know, Shakima gave us great breakdown of what you should consider when financing a wedding. So what, you know, those wonderful images that we've just seen, how much do you think we should budget? But then again, does one budget when one wants that?
No, I'm kidding. I mean, truthfully, I would say for my weddings, the cost would be, if I do it on a per person, like how Shakima did it,
Yes.
I would say you would start at 30,000 Jamaican dollars per person for my wedding design work.
Okay, thank God we have Sajikon beside us here today to pick up the overdraft. Yes, okay, and what what are some of the tips that you share with your brides, Aisha? I love the fact that you said, you know, about, because, you know, we do, you know, we know what's going on in the world of weddings, because fortunately for us, we have Shakima writing and going and attending all of these wedding expos around the world and doing her research and everything. But what is today's bride looking for?
In my experience, they're looking for an amazing overall wedding celebration. And they're looking for a day that looks like them. There is a lot of not wanting to do what a friend did or what someone else did. And so, you know, that's, Shakima can attest that we're going to some venues that are off the beaten path.
Yes,
They're just
yes, I've noticed that. Yes.
Right. So, you know, and, you know, doing all sorts of build outs, and it's crazy to get guests up there. So, you know, everybody's sort of pushing for uniqueness, and we're going really far and really deep to get that. And given the cost of weddings, I always encourage guests to, my clients, to make sure that only the people that they need to be there, like you can't imagine the day without them, those are the people that come. Because what happens is when you invite everyone, even those who you're inviting because they're going to feel bad, you dilute the overall experience that you can give your guests. So I'm very like, if you don't love them, if they don't need to be there, don't. Because at some point, as Shakima said, everyone is going to start looking like the plates and the chair and the because you're like, it gets so expensive.
Yes, and indeed, I think, you know, somebody said when I sent them the link that you should concentrate, brides-to-be should concentrate on the godparents and the people and the friends who can afford to fill the envelopes. Oh my God, yes, somebody actually did say that. Shakima, how do you manage expectations? Because, you know, people want an out-of-the-way venue, they want a spectacular venue, but then the reality is it costs a fortune. So how do you manage expectations, and how do you manage people wanting what you perhaps are unable to deliver?
You know, I pretty much break it down just like what I did in that video with them. It's in my consultations with my clients, I really try to get to know their personality and what's important to them. So you need to help them to prioritize the must-haves and the elements of the wedding that matters the most to them. With the age of social media and Instagram and Pinterest, everyone has this dream of what they think that their wedding would and should look like. Based on my years of experience, I can actually look on a wedding and tell how much it costs. So when I get their Pinterest board or they start sharing images of what they like, I can instantly say, a wedding like this would possibly cost X. Is that something that is within your budget or you're willing to spend? Then I look at their priorities and said, okay, based on what you have, this is how we're gonna allot the funds. And the budget management is the most important step, because any of the vendors on this panel will tell you, everybody will come to you with the best ideas, And it takes time and energy to do those quotations and prepare those concepts. So as a planner, part of my job is to help them narrow whatever their vision is, so that when we go to the other vendors, then half of the legwork would have already been done, so that they have a smaller bracket in which to help the client to develop the concept for whatever that particular part of their wedding is.
Aisha, back to you now. Tell us about your journey to who you are today, and the spectacular weddings that you are able to deliver for your brides and bridegroom. How did it start?
Well, maybe this is a typical thing, but the seed for me really was planted when I was planning my own wedding. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed it, but anyway, that was many years ago. But that was the first seed. And then, you know, we were living away and we were coming back and we were setting up our house, and I just sort of started getting into like entertaining and liking it. And then, you know, people are just like, you're good at this. And I'm just like, yeah, and I'm enjoying it. And so I was gonna have a party, and this will also tell you the genesis of the name as well. And the dress code for the party was dress to post back foot. Yes. And so I decided that I was going to like do my best on this party and just let it be incredible and see how people responded to it, and see if I had a thing going here and if it could become a business. And the party was a blast, and everybody started creating these Facebook, because it was Facebook at the time. Yes, I'm aging myself. Facebook to push back foot indeed, and push back foot this, and push back foot that. And I had wanted a name that was Jamaican for my company, and I wanted something that meant style. And my brother said, well, there's your name, Push Back Foot. And that's how Push Back Foot began. And I literally, it started out as instinct, natural talent. I mean, honestly, I'm a little blown away by God, by what I've seen come out of this. I mean, it literally, I don't know. The journey has been wild. And so here I am, you know, it has been a lot of blood, sweat, tears, traveling, being around, going to places like Shikima, where you're exposing yourself to people operating at an international world-class standard. And I've been going at it since 2008, and just literally pouring every single thing into it. And I'm here now, and it feels good. And there is just still so much more to come. I love what I do, but I'm looking on it and I'm going, gosh, I can't wait till I get to the next step. And so, yeah, next step is coming. Thank you.
Okay. Well, we'll come back to you, but we're having a nice time so far. We're a bit hungry, Oji. Yeah. So, Oji Jaja is the executive culinary artist. So we're going to watch a little bit of what he does, and then we'll get back to him. Hopefully by that time we'll have something to eat. Shikima did tell us that we should have something to eat upon arrival. Well, I'm definitely hungry now, Oji. So, what do I serve my guests? How do I decide what they should eat? I know what I like, but how do I determine what they should eat?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on this program today. It's definitely an honor to be able to share the stage with Jamaica's finest. But when it comes on to making a selection on food, I normally start off by talking to my clients about, how many guests they actually have. Because that's going to play a big role in terms of just the type of menu that we create for them. And we're always creating menus, so you'll never have the same. Two brides are never going to have the same menu. So we talk to them about that, and then we go into, like the dietary restrictions, because you have some persons who are allergic to nuts and pineapples and onions. So that's a part of it. Then we figure out, do they want plated buffet? Do they want it to be more like a party vibe where it's really just stations, or they can get heavy hors d'oeuvres that are passed around for the entire evening. We talk to them about their look and feel, what exactly would they like to have their guests experience? What would they like to experience for the evening? And then we talk about age group, because of course, if we have a more mature group, we want to prepare the meals in a way that will be conducive to them, and any kind of dietary restrictions that may have. Ethnicity always plays a role. And then budget, of course. We talk to them about budget, and we try to ensure that the overall dining experience for them is a very pleasant one that they'll enjoy and remember, because again we're creating memorable experiences for them.
Yes, and can you just tell us a little bit about your personal journey into food? Because I think what people love the most about your food, of course, it does taste good, but it's the presentation, it's the pride of presentation. You really are a culinary artist. It's, the magic of seeing you at work and how you're plating the food, it's just really extraordinary. So could you just tell us a little bit about your background into food?
Oh, thanks. All right, so.
Well, okay. Let me first of all say, because he won't say it, but let's just say that we bucked him up when he was feeding Tom Cruise not so long ago. Yes, did I really drop that name? Yes, I did. Yes.
All right. Yes. Nobia, you have really been integral in my career, and just for my exposure over the years. I started my culinary journey back in 1998, actually, at Runaway Bay Heart. It was something that I've always wanted to do. Never thought I could have done it as a career until that time. And then I had the opportunity to go to the Ritz-Carlton, which was like the experience for me, because I had the opportunity to work with master chefs. I've worked with 5 master chefs in my career, and that I think has helped to shape me into the culinary professional that I am now. And then coming back to Jamaica in 2006 to start my business, pretty much with nothing, in my mother's front yard, using her pots and pans, to now we are in a 3,000 plus square foot facility where we're also doing manufacturing. We have products on the shelves in local supermarkets, but we also have them on Amazon, and those are doing very well as well. Distributing them in the North American market. Not sure. I know I'm all over the place with this right now, but I I'm just really grateful for where we are, and the opportunity to be able to share what I love with others and know that they genuinely appreciate it.
Tell us now, station. You mentioned station, you mentioned a buffet, you mentioned plated. What do you recommend? Or is it based on what I say? For example, some people don't like to line up for food.
Yes. All right. So again, it just depends on the look and feel that you would want for your wedding. Do you want persons to get a beverage when they're coming in before the ceremony? That is something that has been coming up, where persons want to do like light refreshments just before the ceremony because they know persons will be sitting for a bit. Do you want persons to have to get up and go stand in a line? Or do you want to just have a party vibe where after the ceremony is done, we have butler passed hors d'oeuvres going out, and then we open more stations, and we have servers still coming to you with various menu items. Those are things that can be done. Plated is always very elegant, and so I always recommend that for persons who want a more elegant experience. If you want something more laid back and relaxed, I'd say go with stations. Don't necessarily go with like a buffet just because it's one line. So we normally recommend like doing multiple stations where you can go and get complete meals.
Yes. I like that as well. The questions are coming in fast and furious, both on my phone and on from our viewers. So we're going to come back to you, Oji, but I'm just going to ask, to just so that some of the questions can move. I guess this is for Vinny. Jackie McDonald Davis from the UK was obviously impressed with your presentation, Vinny. It sounds to me that you need to ensure that a reputable jeweler is identified to advise. I dare say yes, right, Vinny? They shouldn't just go to a corner shop and buy a piece of jewelry, should they?
They should never go to a corner shop to buy a wedding ring, please. The Bijou's been in the business for 70 plus years, and we cater all our guests coming from all around the world. I have seen in my airport store, as well as our Montego Bay store and our Falmouth store and our Ochi store, we've witnessed many times where gentlemen walk in, never thought of proposing, buying an engagement ring, and proposing right in the store, and improvising and popping that champagne and creating a moment. It's all of a sudden you have all the clients in the store participating
in that moment. Lovely.
It's just all cheers, all tears from the girl's eyes, and that moment is priceless.
So what? Sorry, go ahead.
No, so I've been part of this. I've had tears in my own eyes when I see the beauty of the bonding between a husband and wife to be.
Okay, and Shakima, this I think is your question. How do you subtly advise so that the wedding doesn't put couples in debt? I think that's a good question.
Ties back again to the budget. You have to plant a seed in their mind that there is life after the wedding. I find that a lot of couples depend on some of these cash wedding gifts that they're expecting to carry them forward after the wedding day. But they have to have, there's life after the happily ever after where you're going to live. There needs to be a budget for the honeymoon. There are many other things that come. So when you're looking at the budget, it's not what you have in your savings account, but what portion of what you have available that you want to allot to the wedding day, so that after that fact, life goes on, you can have a nice honeymoon, you can have a vacation at the end of the summer, and you can look into purchasing a home if you don't already have that. So that's how you have to plan in order not to get into debt. It's not just planning the wedding, but there is a life planning process that's involved in getting married.
Thank you very much. Well said, as always. We're still hungry, so we'll get back to OG. We're just having our first course. But I'd like to address a question that has come in, and I want to address it. The perception of high costs. How expensive is expensive? I get the feeling, says Stacey Williams, that the cost per guest are high for Shakim and Aisha because they do destination weddings. Am I right? They do destination weddings, but they do weddings wherever your destination happens to be, right? And I think the cost is relative to wherever you go, anywhere in the world, if you want a fabulous wedding. And I say this without fear of contradiction, that we do have the best weddings in Jamaica, actually, all round we do. And I've been to some allegedly spectacular ones overseas, and the ones in Jamaica are much better.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah, yes, indeed. I've seen some pictures of even some royal weddings where the things are not even properly fitted. Yes. Anyway, we have the ring. We've spoken to our wedding planner, right? We're totally blown by the possibilities of what Aisha is going to prepare for us, and we are contemplating is now, a station or a plated for Oji Jaja. But guess what? We do need a cake. Camille Flynn is the principal of Cake Couture JA. This is what she does.
Hello, my name is Camille Flynn. I am the Managing Director and Chief Sugar Artist for Cake Couture JA. I've been in this business for nearly a decade, providing bespoke cakes, both character, sculpted, and wedding cakes. And it has absolutely been a joy, a wonderful learning experience, and I do enjoy being a part of all these special occasions of which I am informally invited to. It's always such a joy and such a privilege being a part of special occasions in one way or the other. I love interacting with my brides and my grooms, as well as our talented wedding and event coordinators. Being in the industry, it has shown me that brides and grooms are very different in their likes and in their tastes, and I love to express that in the cakes that I do, whether it is through color, through texture, through making sugar flowers, or any little detail just to make the cake specifically for my couple. In every wedding cake that I produce, I try and make it my own, as well as to impart as much of my client as I possibly can. I encourage my clients to send references, to use things as a reference, but in general, to try and make it their own. So even if there's an inspiration or design that they would like to share, I encourage them to try and find ways so that when they do see it on the internet or when anyone else sees it, they'll know exactly who it belongs to. servicing my clients and this industry for many years to come.
We're loving the feedback that we're getting from our viewers. Thank you very much for tuning in. And don't forget that the entire program is available after the webinar on the Observer's webinar platform. Feedback. I do part one, some of the best in the business. Brand Jamaica represented well. I definitely agree. Love to know that created, designed and delivered, all delivered by Jamaicans. Hey Vinny, oh, somebody's getting very comfortable with Vinny. Hey Vinny, say I didn't buy the wedding ring from Bijou. Oh dear me. Would you still resize a product that's not your own, and what's the cost? Hey Vinny,
Yes.
that's for you.
Yes, we do resize. We have a immaculate service center with jewelry sizing and jewelry repair. So we, especially in our Kingston location, as well as our Montego Bay location, so we can do everything possible when it comes to repair, sizing, and it all blends down to the material. First, it's yellow gold, white gold, and we do ask the client to bring in the product, and then we can suggest them what price it is to do the entire process of sizing up or sizing down.
Okay, so Stacy, hey Vinny, Stacy, you can take the ring to Vinny. This is a question from Latoya Maitland. When you have decided on your wedding date, should you pay for your honeymoon from your budget before any other items of the wedding? Shakima, do you want to answer that? Should you pay for the honeymoon first?
That really is up to you. Is the honeymoon is it a top on your list of priorities? Then if it is, then you want to get it out of the way. But you pay for things that you think are the most important to you. And a lot of couples are holding off on their honeymoon and not necessarily, driving to wherever their destination or flying out immediately after the wedding. Sometimes a honeymoon happens up to 6 weeks after the wedding, because sometimes they take a lot of time off the week of or the week prior to the wedding for planning and final details, that they need to allot a little more time to either gather vacation time or gather their budget to take the honeymoon at a time that's more ideal or suited for them. So when you pay for your honeymoon really depends on how much of a priority that is for you. And I always recommend, if it's something important, you start paying a little bit at a time. You start securing whether it's a hotel or a villa accommodations, and just allotting a little bit until you get to the actual honeymoon stage. Most destinations for accommodation or airlines, they take a deposit to secure the time, and then you can just continue your payment until you're pretty much ready to go.
Okay, thank you. So we're now back with Camille Flynn and her cakes. Well, certainly, Camille, your lovely personality alone would encourage us to probably spend more than we have budgeted for. So talk to us first and foremost about the types of cakes and the ballpark costs.
Okay, well, of course, the cake now depends on the number of guests that you're having. It also depends on the whole size of the reception. So normally I tell my brides to give me an idea as to the number of guests they want to have, but then how many that they want to serve. So let's just say that you don't want to serve everyone with your wedding cake. You have side cakes, which I always recommend, by the way, because it's so much easier to serve your guests. Yeah. I use that as the ballpark figure, and depending on the number of tiers, you can go anywhere from, well, mine start at around almost $600 up to, well, you can go really high, but $1,300 is not unlucky. First of all, let me say good morning to all of my esteemed colleagues. Hi, Alyssa. Hello,
Hi.
and hi, world. How are you?
I've loved your cakes for a very long time, and I know we're talking weddings, but you do every possible type of other cake. If we dream it, you can create it, and that's one of the things I love most about you. I really, really desperately want to ask, though, about this concept of dummy layers of cakes.
Yes.
And how you feel about that.
It makes so much sense. I absolutely love it because you'll have the bride that only wants 40 guests, but she wants 7 tiers of cake. I can't make all of that real cake. It would be so wasteful. So it works really well, and you can. It allows you then to have anything you want, anything at all. You can't tell the difference. You really can't tell the difference. And as I said, sheet cakes are the best thing to put on the side. It makes it so much easier to serve. It's the way I try and encourage all my brides to go.
And then also, the dummy layers, though, still have to be decorated. So it's not like they're free and you're only paying for one layer of cake.
No, they're not free. But, if you want to put it, let's put it into perspective.
Oh my God, Alicia,
listen,
please.
I'm just saying, the brides need to know.
It's not
that there is a
I
cost.
absolutely understand, yes, because of course there's still the fondant, but for example, my wedding cakes, I tend to use ganache on the outside as opposed to buttercream because we live in Jamaica, and the weather is just not loving buttercream very, very much. Right? So when you take out the cost of the ganache and you take out the cost of the actual cake, you can have, let's just say, a 12-inch dummy that will cost you $2,000. But if it were a real cake, it would be 12. So you do see savings the larger you go with the cake sizes. Maybe not so much for a 5-inch or a 6-inch, but as you get bigger in your tiers, you'll definitely see the savings.
And then I have one more question for Camille and for OG. What is your take on serving only wedding cake as the dessert for your wedding?
You mean no dessert station?
No dessert station. Just Camille Flynn's cake.
Shakima says that we must have a dessert station.
I agree that I do think you need to have a dessert station. Okay, so for example,
the record,
Jamaica,
I absolutely agree too.
Yes. Yeah, and I agree because, for example, fruit cake, Jamaican fruit cake, black cake, that's the cake that everybody wants to use as their wedding cake. Not everybody eats it. I don't. So I would want to know that I can have a choice and then something that would also last me through the night. So when you have the dance floor open, you still want people to be able to pick. And I know OG won't be available then, or really. But you still want to appeal to the masses. So you want to give everybody a little bit what they would want. Don't focus too much, especially on flavor with what you, the bride, want to cut into. You remember you're catering for 100 persons, and not everybody's a vanilla lover, not everyone's a chocolate lover. So the more variety you have in your desserts, the better it would be.
I'm sorry,
Totally agree
I'm
with you.
sorry, Camille, but as my dear friend Cecile would say, it's all about me. Focus. So yes, so the dessert station would be all about me. But Camille, you made mention of the fact that not everybody likes the traditional wedding cake, the black cake, the fruit cake, the heavy fruit cake. So what's today's bride looking for?
Wow. Well, I think everybody's trying to get exotic in their flavor choices. I find that to do a lot of liqueur fillings. Amaretto is very popular. Baileys is everything with a chocolate rum cake or vanilla rum cake. So people are shying away. They're moving away from the traditional, but then they have to think about the parents who are also probably contributing to the wedding. Yes. So normally what I suggest is, and no, let's not forget the high price points, all that wine and all those
and
fruits,
the cake
and,
fruits.
Yeah, it's very rich in both flavor and cost. So I normally just suggest to my brides that, okay, let's have that as cut up cake. Because when I have to put it on the main cake, I have to bake that cake 2, sometimes 3 times to get the right height. You know, you can't bake fruit cake too high, or else the inside's not gonna be so nice, right? So, and then I'm still one of those traditional bakers where I use almond paste on my cakes before I put the fondant on. So that is another cost factor, because that costs more than the fondant, right? So you'd really want to just have your fruit cake on the side and then have something really nice as your main cake that you can serve after. So that now can contribute towards the dessert station. If you're having a function the day after, it can also be there, because a lot of brides and grooms tend to have brunches after the wedding day, yes, especially for destination weddings. So that can serve for the day after. And then you have something that if you invited me, I don't eat fruit cake, I'd like to have a piece of your wedding cake.
Camille, let me ask you this. Do you decorate other people's cakes? Because there's nothing worse, actually, in my mind, than going to a wedding, seeing a lovely cake, and then it tastes awful. I've had quite a few of those experiences, Camille. I'm not going to call anybody's names, but do you do other people's cake? You're a baker, you also decorate.
Yes. Okay, as Shakima said earlier, experience teaches wisdom.
Yes.
I've learned the hard way. And let's get back to that fruit cake, because of course, now because of the price point of fruit cake, people tend to want to say, oh, my auntie, she makes this cake and she makes it so well. She really wants to be a part of my special day. Can you cover the cake? I've done it before, and I'm telling you,
never.
I can now say no. I do not cover other people's cakes. You see, especially with something like that, where you know how often they wet the cake. You have to strike a balance. You know, if you want to have the aesthetic, you have to be able to say okay, but maybe not so much rum, because when that dark wine starts to seep through your wedding cake,
we've seen it.
They're gonna come to me.
Yes.
You have to be very careful. Yeah. So I don't cover other people's cakes because I don't know what they're doing. And you know, as I said, everybody has their secret recipe and their formula that, you know, sometimes doesn't work well with fondant, you know.
And how early should a bride to be find you, Camille?
Well, if I told you that I were booked into late 2023, it just goes to show that my dates are
fabulous.
Wow.
I'm always constantly booked, which I'm grateful for. Bearing in mind that I don't only do wedding cakes, you know. So with my business, every day is a birthday. I really could be busy every single day. So the earlier the better. And then because, I mean, I'll have to be honest, I'm a one-woman show because I don't talk very well with this, but I talk very well with these. And every cake is my baby. I don't know how else to put it. Every single cake is my baby. It will be done by me. So with that in mind, my availability is very limited.
Also, you don't cover other people's cakes, fine, and I agree with that 100%. Now, when a bride engages you, does that mean that, and her wedding, because you're in Kingston, and her wedding is not in Kingston?
And I go everywhere.
Okay, so you will assemble the cake. You'll take the cake and assemble it.
Most definitely, especially if it's something that needs to be done. You'll see me there. You'll see me there.
Okay.
Yes, I assemble. Yes.
I think people. Yeah, that was a question. Will she take the cake? Yes. Okay. I have to look at the questions. I've got another question for you. I've got a question for, you know, Vinny. I'm not too sure why Vinny's everybody's best friend. It's because the diamonds. Yes, we get it. It's the diamonds. Okay. Yes, Camille. Okay, so somebody wants 3 different types of cake in the one cake. So I guess one tier, another tier, and another tier. Is that possible?
Most definitely. Just as I said earlier, though, just be very mindful of your selections. OG also spoke to allergies. So you have to think about the nut allergies. Some people are allergic to fruits. So even like my raspberry filling, not everyone can have it because it's the real raspberries. And then, of course, the red. Yeah, so you really have to be very careful. about your choices. So try and keep it, as I always say, keep the batter basic, but then you can go crazy on the fillings. So if anything, they can eat around it.
Gotcha. Audrey, take us back to allergies, because, you know, as Camille mentioned, I mean, it's a real thing, and oftentimes you go out, the servers sometimes don't even know what it is that they're serving. So how do you mitigate against that? How do you organize it?
All right, so it normally starts with the consultation. So we always have a consultation with our bride and groom, because it's critical that we understand what kind of allergies are out there. And once we understand that, then we design the menu in a way that we minimize the possibility of cross-contamination significantly. So a part of that has to do with ensuring that the entire team is aware. When we're doing that preparation, let's say somebody's allergic to shrimp, normally we just don't put it on the menu altogether. And then we also ensure that the servers, once we get on site, there's a meeting that happens before the event so that everybody is briefed. And then throughout service, I'm constantly checking with the planners and the bride and groom themselves, just to ensure that everybody's fine. Because it normally pops up also, like some persons might not say it when the RSVPs are going out that they have any allergies, but should that happen, we normally isolate dishes for persons who may have any kind of allergy.
If you are booked for an event, a wedding, Audrey, how does the tasting go? Do I pay you for the tasting, or is that included in the cost?
Good question.
All right, so if you book us...
No, our people are on the ball. Go ahead, Audrey. I think just froze. We'll come back to you, because I think Audrey is just frozen. Camille, pick up this for me. How do you organize your cake and dessert tasting session? Camille, if I pay for your wedding cake, how do I taste it? How do I know what I'm getting?
Okay, well, normally the tasting is done before the bride even confirms. So that is done at a cost. But if you do choose to go with me, then some of it is taken out of the cost for the wedding cake. So
go back again. The bride has booked you, Camille. She has booked you. She has given you your deposit, right? Is the tasting session, I mean, how does she know what she's going to get from you?
Oh, no, okay, but really and truly, a bride isn't going to pay me unless they taste what they're getting, for the most part. Some people...
But they've gone to a function and they've tasted your cake. So that's why it's usually word of mouth referral.
Well, to be honest, tastings aren't really something that we really explore out here. As you said, it is really done. It's not done very often. I can tell you, I can count on one hand the amount of times I've had to do it, right? So, but yes, they would have to pay for that the tasting as well. And then some of it will come out of then the balance of your deposit.
Okay.
Or your rest of the cake, right?
Back to you, Audrey. I think we had a moment. Okay, we're talking to you about the tasting. We heard from Camille. If a bride books you, how does she says, okay, I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that. Do you do a tasting?
Yes, we always do a tasting, and not just because we think that they're not going to like it, but just so that we can understand what the palate of the client is. And tastings are normally at a cost. They're normally at the cost of the menu, but that cost is always subtracted should they decide that they're going to book us. But if they've already booked us, then there's definitely no cost associated with the tasting. And we'll do a tasting for up to 2 persons.
Oh, that's important. So they're not to bring everybody to the tasting. You have to spell. You see, you have to spell everything out. So The tasting is not for you and your wedding guests and the bridal party. It's for you and your bridegroom. Is that correct, RG? It's not even for
That's correct.
not even for the parents.
No, and the truth is, the only other person that we really try to encourage to be at our tastings are the planners, because they also need to be aware of what's going on.
Gotcha. Okay, moving right along. Vinny, do you engrave the rings after the wedding ceremony?
Before or after?
Okay. Good, thank you. So, we have the ring, we've gone to the event planner, we've closed our eyes and we're fantasizing about what Aisha is going to make for us, what Audrey is going to cook for us, and we've had the tasting, and we've had the cake, even though Camille is not going to give us a tasting before, but we've gone to several other weddings, so we know that the cake is good. Carlton Brownell bespoke tailor. And of course, because the groom has to kind of at least compliment the bride. So let's see. You are. Hi, Carlton. How are you? Can you hear me? It's all smiles. Are you mute? Can you unmute, please, Carlton?
Hold on there. Hello, on my soul.
We are here.
Yes,
welcome.
I'm hearing you and you look great.
You look great, Carlton.
I try.
Okay, you are bespoke tailor Carlton Brown, the go-to, gent in Jamaica and elsewhere for the, for bridegrooms getting ready for their wedding day. What should a bridegroom say to you before he says yes to the suit? We're saying yes to the suit first today as opposed to yes to the dress.
Okay, fine. Suppose I tell you that after time, in terms of, just the groom deciding what he wants, there's always the fiancée that pulls out her file. And oftentimes you hear from the groom, yeah, man, whatever she said, I'm good. Like, okay. You know what I mean? But oftentimes it's really the woman, to be honest with you, who leads. You know, that's the favorite color, that's what they're looking for. And then, you know, from that I work. But over time, I realized that the process really is, you know, having a consult with them, you know, find out what they really want, you know, what he wants, what she likes, you know, and then it comes from, sometimes for me, just, you know, invitation tells me exactly, you know, how the suit, what kind of suit works, the kind of fabric they choose. You know, we choose for that too. But it depending on, I mean, if it's a morning wedding, I mean, it depends on, you know, if it's a morning wedding.
Yes,
you know,
if it's a morning wedding, Carlton,
yeah.
what?
Morning wedding, color is important.
Sorry, what is important?
Color is important.
Why is the
right?
color important?
Because to have a morning wedding, and you're going black tuxedos, it is, you know, with that, it depending on the setting as well. You know, if it's a garden wedding, I mean, you know, the color is important where, you know, you either go, you know, on the lightest shade of gray, you know, you keep it on the tan side, whatever shade of blue. But it really comes back really to what the client wants. So if the client wants a tuxedo for the morning wedding, it really comes back to the fabric, because you can't use, you know, a Super 120, Super 180 wool for that. You will collapse. You know, because
not if it's an indoor wedding with AC, Carlton.
Right, exactly. You
okay.
know,
so what is your suggestion for somebody getting married? How many weeks before the wedding should he be in touch with you, or should his fiancé be in touch with you?
But to be honest with you, I mean, you have some people, you know, to be honest, you have some client and customers that really start a process within a month and a half, sometimes 2 to 3 weeks. But it really depends, because if it's an entire bridal party of, which you don't really see that anymore like that, you know, an entire bridal party of like 6 or 7, that's like a 2-month process, you know. Yes. And then the difficulty with that is that, the problem with that is that sometimes where the problem lies is that if you have, let us say you have 7 in the bridal party, 3 is in Jamaica, the rest is overseas. Sometimes that's the issue. You know what I mean? So what I work with is that, you know, there's a measurement chart I give them, they get to a tailor, not a, you know, yes, a menswear that does specs. You know, to follow that. And then I work from that. So with that and a photo, it works. But everything comes back to really the timing of them coming to Jamaica to do fittings, because it's really normally 2 to 3 fittings. Mm-hmm. Right? That's really the process, you know. But you have to explain to the client sometimes, it's not, because you have some guys really believe, I mean, take the measurement, that's it, they must come pick up. They really do. Honestly, they do. They really think, once you take the measurement, when we can pick up, this will work. You know, there's a mock-up fit, then there's the actual fit of the suit, you know, in its construction, and then after there's another fit again, everything to say that is fine, and then you deliver.
And that's then I know you like the bridegroom to bring the shirt, to bring everything, the shoe, the socks,
you bring everything, you know. Yeah, you know, you bring everything, but sometimes, to be honest, the shirt sometimes really, it's really your choice, but I mean, it can work, and I can work around that, you know. Okay. So it doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, your shirt has to be there really. But overall though, it's funny that we were talking, as like everybody really says the same thing. You know, it comes back down to really and truly what the client wants, and you as the creative has to direct that person, you know. Because sometimes I remember doing a wedding and the guy wanted a tuxedo. Fine, I do it. And then almost a week after, the guy bring him back and said, I can't take off the black. I want to realize now, he never understood that once anything has been made, it's a process. Right? So he wanted to take off the black so he can have a regular suit. It doesn't work like that. You know what I mean? So oftentimes I say, even with bridal parties, sometimes I say, like a girl wanted everybody to be in a peach suit at one point. And I say, you're going to ask some guys who really don't wear a suit to pay for a suit that they will never wear again.
They'll never wear again, yes.
You know, and I tell her, I said, honestly, this would be unfair to those guys. Because must remember, your girl's wearing a peach dress to wear to the wedding, and they can still wear to another party or another event or whatever the case is. And they can switch it up. For a guy, a peach shoes is a peach suit.
So who pays for the suit? This was something that
in reality,
yes. Your bridal party. We'll ask Shakima next time.
I would have said, or back then, is normally the groom would do all of that.
Right.
But things at times will change over the time. So no groom is, a lot of the grooms really and truly can't afford to pay for 3, 4, 5 suits for some bedrooms. No, it doesn't work like that. So, and that is why it's important. The color that you choose is important, because if a man is going to pay X amount for a suit, he wants to know if he buy the suit for the wedding, he can wear it again till it's done. Right? So if a man go and buy a green suit, like I said, a bottle green suit, how often can you wear a bottle green suit? You know what I mean? As opposed to getting a black suit or getting a gray suit or getting a navy blue. It depends on the shade, but you can do a lot with it. You know, and that is kind of things I try to, to put to our guys, to a lot of these guys all the time. And as I said, for the groom himself, to me, I say it all the time, as a groom, whatever you want is your day. I've said it over and over. Whatever you want, that's your day, right? But for your groomsmen who's paying for their stuff, your fiance has to understand that, hey, the man, I'm going to pay for them thing, and I'm not going to wear a baby blue suit every week. Mm-hmm. It's not good, because I've seen it has happened so often, you wouldn't believe, you know? And to be honest, sometimes is that the bride and them really strong-headed. They say, if it's what them having a for them notebook at that, them want it. And you can't change it. I'll be honest with you, one day, I wouldn't say my cuss her up, but me and her catch up.
Carlton.
I did. No. I had to break it down, trying to tell you, this is the reality. This is the reality. You have to, yes, it's what you want. 1, that's what you want. Yeah, great. 2, who the man who you're choosing for your bridal party, can they afford it? Mm-hmm. Right? And I mean real. And when the man them tell, Lord Jesus said no, so they can't afford it. But you have to be honest, and it's the reality.
Give us an idea, Carlton, as to as to what your wedding suit would cost for the groom, and then for the groomsman.
Right. In terms of as a standard suit, it starts at 8. Right? You're doing a 3-piece, it's from 90 to 100, but everything really comes back down to the fabrics, because the fabric is important, right? Because I can use one of the cheapest fabric, and your suit look all right, as opposed to you can use one of the most expensive fabric and your suit look fabulous, right? So it really depends on the fabric, because every fabric falls different. You know what I mean? As a matter of fact, this right you see behind me, this is silk. You know what I mean? And that's just silk in itself. So just looking at it, it's flawless. Basically, that's a fabric. You know what I mean? This one brand right here is also not toxic, but this is a brocade, right? It's all in the detail. You feel it's a touchy-feely fabric, and you see it. You know what I mean? It photographs well. So it's a 3-piece will bring you from 90 to 100. It all depends on the fabric. So a tuxedo bring you from 120 upwards. It all depends on the fabric that you want.
So who would you suggest wear, a double-breasted suit as opposed to a 3-piece suit?
Well, first of all, and I'm being real. Well, no way, no me real, me say it.
Yes, we know.
I see too many big belly man in a double-breasted jacket. Not do it. Don't. You can't have a gas balloon you can't have a hot air balloon at a wedding. It doesn't look good, right? Because in other words, in a double-breasted jacket, it's 2 times base. It's 2, right? So for me, I always suggest that if depending on your size, right, you go a single breast 3-piece. What the vest does is that the vest basically create the illusion of your tummy being flat, right? Yes. So you can open the jacket, the tummy still are exposed because the jacket hides all of that.
Right.
The vest hides all of that. So it works, right? For me, somebody who is slim and lean, a double-breasted suit work any day, anytime. But you can't be too big and in a double-breasted. A lot of guys want to get married in a double-breasted suit sometimes, and I said to them, I just tell them no, I tell them straight up. And I remember one guy work out in a rough, but you're real. And straight up. If I never do that, I'll take your money and make it go on the fool. I'm not going to do that. No, I'll tell you straight up. You're too big for that. Mm-hmm. It is what it is.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm asking, people have, times have really changed. So you're seeing the bridegrooms are looking really stunning on their wedding day, and the suit is very on trend, and the colors, etc., etc. Has that shift taken place over the last 5 years, or the last decade, more 3 years perhaps?
I would say roughly more than 10 years now. It's been shifted, because at one point, you wouldn't catch a man in a certain colors. Right now, a man
exactly
wearing comfortably. I mean, I personally have no way supposed to know by now. I mean, I have no, me wear any color. I care zero. Because it's me, it's if it come back down to your personality, but you can't to give somebody who is in them, you know, Michelle and them not even want to wear one polka dot socks, trim in a red suit. You know, that's suicide, you know, for that person. So you don't do that. You know what I mean? You consult a person, you say, yeah, well, this is what you can do that. And you know, you want to try a red vest with it? You know what I mean? So, all right, we try it. So at least him can have the option of taking off the vest if he's not comfortable at the event. As opposed to can't take off him red pants.
So the groom takes care of his suit, and his groomsmen pay for theirs. That's the standard now. That's what you'll see nowadays.
Yeah, that's what it is. Because oftentimes you say, all right, fine. So how much am I whenever you say, boy, you know, $2. So all right, fine. So the groom's are the ones that, you know, I mean, after that, they say, all right, fine. You're not gonna talk to them because you are the man them say, and and you get it. You know what I mean? So you come back and say, you what, just do me. See, them are gonna start out for them thing. And the suggestion I have to that all the time, I say, look here, if you're gonna make somebody else do it, don't make one go in tailor this or one go the next tailor, one go the next tailor. Exactly. You know, with 4 different suits on the day. And I've seen it happen before. Right? It shows in the photos. Awful. Awful in Nova's words. Awful. Right? But that is, you see, come out down to affordability. It's like you can't even, you know, quarrel upon a man so you can do that. But you come down to, but if you're gonna do that, just go to the same tailor with all three got the same person. That's my recommendation. Go to the same tailor where they want to look good. Better everything look bad one time than it look one look good this and the other three.
Yes,
no.
exactly.
If I look bad, make everybody look bad one time.
Same so.
This is what it is, you know. As I say, it really comes down to affordability for a lot of guys, but you have to understand where a man's pocket is. You know what I mean? It's not everybody can walk up in a store and go buy a shoes for 40 grand. No, it's not everybody can do that. But I'm gonna find somebody down at one and say, oh, this look good, and them just work with it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And them still look the part, but you know, it is what it is. And honestly, what this last 2 years have taught me was you have to just work with a man's pocket.
Yes, you do. Well, as everybody has said, you have to work with the person.
For the last 2 years.
Okay, you know, Carlton, how can Vidal make contact with you for a tailored suit?
Oh, I mean, can you remember my Instagram? All my information is there.
Okay.
Carlton, TTT Brown.
There you have it. And is there
once you got everything is there, you can call me.
I like the fact that you made mention of suits that photograph well. I really love that, because that too is important, you know, choosing the type of fabric that will photograph well. Nice. Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll come back to you, Carlton. Rough but real. Petrie Ann Henry sounds like a bride that you had buffed, Carlton. Rough but real. Love your realness, Carlton. Okay, good. Now, we move to talk about rough but real. Oh, yes, we're moving now to Annalisa Lindsay, attorney at law. Mm-hmm. Welcome, Annalisa. So, Annalisa, who gets the engagement ring and who gets the wedding ring in the prenup?
All right. Good morning, everybody. I'm. A lot of people would say that this is the most unusual panel that I would be participating in, because when it comes to weddings, I'm a guest. However, it's very interesting. I'm happy that OJ mentioned that, or you mentioned that OJ had made a meal for Mr. Tom Cruise, and it's very interesting.
Yes.
Like this. And I want to segue using him because everybody knows of his previous marriage to Nicole Kidman, and when it is that they separated, one of the things that people do is they will leave it to the law what will happen to me in a marriage because I'm marrying well, or they contemplate having a prenuptial agreement, and our law now allows for that, and also a postnup. And I use him as a segue because in his marriage to Nicole, they didn't have a prenuptial agreement, and California law at the time indicated that if it is that you're married for a minimum period of 10 years and you divorce, the husband would pay alimony for life to his ex-wife.
Oh God.
And as a result of that, they separated after 9 years and 11 months. So he ensured that aspect of the law would not kick in for him. And so no prenuptial agreement, they were going to court. Eventually they had a settlement, which is good, which can be part of what a postnup agreement provides for. Or you go through a divorce and you have a settlement. And it's always good when you have a settlement, especially when children are concerned. And having gone through that experience, Nicole Kidman, in getting married to Keith Urban after, had a prenuptial agreement thereafter, prior to that wedding. So sometimes experience is the best teacher, because you know what it is that you want to go about. So I go back to my original proposition, which is, does marrying well make everything easier? Because I will know that, okay, I'm going to get married to Tom Cruise, my set for life, good. No, that does not have to be the case. It happens to a lot of our lady friends. A lot of them, they go after the fact that they want to know that they're getting married to somebody who has means and that they will be comfortable. And a lot of the times that is in fact so during the marriage. Once things go downhill, is a whole nother ball game. I will use an experience that I know of. Of course, I can't have a video like everybody because I can't put my clients on video. I can't show anything that I do with my clients, right? So I can't have a video. So I have to just talk to you how the thing set from a different perspective. So, for example, I had a consultation with a nice, beautiful woman once, having had some difficulties in her marriage and decided that she was at the stage where she had to leave. And when we came and we had a consultation, and she was saying that, she's going to be very comfortable because her husband is so and so, and this is what they own, this is what he does, this is blah, blah, blah. Having gone through all of that, we realized that the person who she got married to, his family was the one. It is a family business that he was a part of. And the family business was all operated through companies. And all of these companies, the main shareholders were still the parents. So although the husband was one of several siblings, all of them worked out of the company. Everything came through the company. So what that showed is that this husband had absolutely nothing in his name, nothing, including the vehicle that the wonderful woman drove to my office in when she could not understand that. And I said, all right, go downstairs, take out the car papers and come back to me. Let us look at them. And of course, it was not in her name, was not in the husband's name, it was in his company's name. And one of the things that our law does, it was groundbreaking in 2006, I think it is, when it came into effect, the Property Rights of Spouses Act that came into effect to really protect spouses, because it doesn't have to always be a woman. The majority of the cases, it protects women, but it doesn't have to be a woman. And what it speaks to is the sharing of assets, which are in the joint names of the parties, in the sole names of each of the parties, but it does not cover property that is in the name of third parties, right? So it was a very hard lesson. And I can say that what I know of that situation is that that woman is still with her husband because she was not in a position to leave. Having said so, the marrying well did not turn out easier for her because she's in a situation that she doesn't want to be in. She's not happy in it, but that is just her reality. So one of the ways that have come about that we can protect ourselves is through a prenup agreement. Since we're talking about weddings, we're not talking about postnup. But a prenup, it is very unromantic. It can be very stressful. It may be used as a weapon to say, all you do is something you want, you're a gold digger, you're not a gold digger, whatever it is, or sign this to prove that you love me, or sign this to prove that this is not what you really want, and so on. It is jarring, but it may be necessary. And in it, you can provide for how it is in the unfortunate event that something goes sour, that this is how you can separate and continue to live. And one of the worst realities of a divorce is that a woman usually comes out much worse than the man as a result of a divorce, especially if the man was the breadwinner in that family unit. And you don't want to live in poverty. Why? And it doesn't mean that what you're doing is living in luxury either. You have a situation where you at least have the dignity to move on with some grace, and that is what the prenup allows you to do. One of the things I will say to persons is that it shouldn't be done the morning of or the night before the wedding. So for all of us who like reality TV and we watch Bravo, and there was the Housewives of Atlanta where there was a wedding that the prenup was signed on the day of the wedding. Some of those circumstances may prove to be an exception, that if somebody were to challenge it later down in the day, a court may say, no, it was signed under duress and therefore it is not enforceable. You don't want that to happen. So you do that with sufficient time before. You do that with the fact that each of you have your own independent advice from a lawyer. Don't go to the same lawyer. Conflict of interest. Them cannot tell you this two separate something. No. Have your own separate attorneys. You get advice from your own separate attorneys. Prenup is actually drafted, finalized, tweaked, whatever it is, for the parties. And then each individual legal advisor for each party in Jamaica, you are obligated to sign or certify in the agreement that you have explained the implications of such an agreement to the spouse that you have, or the intended spouse that you have advised. And then the parties can sign off on the agreement, which is witnessed. Jamaica love quite about JP, but it's witnessed by a JP or an attorney. These are very important in terms of the formalities. The formalities have to be there, because if the formalities are not there, a court may find that it is not binding. And then the circumstances under which you sign it can also show that it is not binding. Again, I will draw on reality TV, because there's a Cartel Crew, I think it is, where there was a couple that got married recently, and the man was saying to her, you have to sign this prenup, and if my mother was alive, who was the head of a cartel, she would have just boxed it out on the desk and hold a gun to your head until you sign the prenup. Those are situations that will cause it to be set aside and unenforceable. But
Annalisa, just a second.
Yes.
Just to advise everybody, we are going to go over the 12 o'clock time, and as you can see, we're having such fun here. So don't move, don't even move for a second. Annalisa, how do you broach the subject of a prenuptial agreement? This is a question that somebody wants to ask you.
Yes.
You've told us, okay, obviously not on the day of the wedding, not as you are about to go into Bijou for Vinny to give you the ring, but how do you broach the subject?
All right, there's no one way and there's no easy way. There's no, a lot of the times it is a hard way. What I would say though, and what I would like to believe, is that a lot of persons, having reached a stage where you're in a relationship and contemplating marriage, even before a proposal, there are a lot of couples who speak about what it is they would want a marriage to look like, how many children they would want to have, all of these other things. I think it is a pre-marriage topic that ought to come up at some point, even if it is even through counseling, when it for persons who still do that, although I know there are a lot who don't. If you go to premarital counseling, it is something I think that needs to be explored, and not in a hostile way. It should never be discussed in a hostile environment, because you want people to willingly come to the table and have the prenup drafted and finalized. It doesn't have to be one way. It can be two way. It can be with a lot of persons just being very honest about what their position in life is now. And sometimes, people get married to grow and develop together. They're not coming from, both parties are not coming from a place of strength or wealth or so on. But you know what your concept is as to what this marriage would look like. Not the wedding, because after the wedding, you now have to go and live with each other. So you know what the concept of this marriage looks like, and you have the way to craft that for each other. Having spoken about it, you have it put down in a document so that it's just easier. I mean, nowadays I find that a lot of people are moving away from love and sentiment and honor and whatever it is, and a lot of other things in life now are really transactional. There's no reason why a marriage cannot be seen in that way, but not in a cut and dry, black and white business situation. But it also just allows people to know that when you messing with yourself now, you might know that because of how the situation is, you may not be quick to run, or if it is that you reach a stage where you have to run, you know that everybody's still going to be all right. In fact, what a prenup may allow is for you to go about your separate ways, but still be cordial, still be friendly, still be friends, because all of the bitterness and thing have already been dealt with based on what you have agreed as to how it is that you would separate.
What is this document? What does the document say?
What, the prenup?
Yes.
All right, so here when Carlton Sam asks people what them want, Shakima asks what them want, Aisha asks what them want. Even if it's not a wedding, you bring a picture of whatever it is you like.
OG asks them what they're allergic to.
Yes, right? These are things that, because you can sit down with your attorney, and I would want you to be as open and honest with them, you can, and transparent. There is absolutely nothing that you do not have to put in there, or is what you call it, off boards from being in there. However, you know what your situation is, so you're starting with what you know, where you are, what you have, and then you move forward. There are a lot of persons who what they have is something that they have inherited through their family. Do I really want to be sharing this with a non-family member, or was it really intended to go to a non-family member? I think that depending on the kind of relationship you have, I think that your spouse or your intended spouse can understand something like that without it being offensive. And that is why the earlier you can speak about these things, you have it put down in your prenup. So you can preserve family heirlooms, things that come down traditionally, you know that it should be disposed of in a similar way and not a subject matter for disposition in relation to a divorce. Both of you may own property individually before going into the marriage that neither of you had contributed to. That shouldn't be your business coming out of a marriage. However, going forward, anything you acquire together, you can say, this is how it is that we will hold it. This is what we foresee for that. And then you deal with those accordingly. You can say, in the event that I have one child, 2 children, 4, whatever it is, although people don't have multiple children so much nowadays, you can have something in there that deals with how it is that you will come to an agreement in relation to custody, care and control of those children, maintenance of those children, the university education of these children, and so on. And it doesn't have to be strict black and white figures. It can be a base with the view to further agreement and so on. There's no one set way, people have to call you and say, Lord, just give me one standard precedent there, make me just sign it. No, we don't work like that. It is dealt with in terms of the circumstances of the individual parties, and you structure it that way so that you're dealing, it is fit for purpose, and That is why the law also allows for the postnup, because after that, so that in line with your development and growth as a couple, as a family, if there are things in there that needs to be revisited, you can.
Okie dokes.
Annalisa, can I ask, in the event of untimely death, is the prenup enforced at that time, or is it a will that comes into place?
All right, so the agreement dies with the death. The prenup is with the expectation that both of you are there and willing and continuing participants of this agreement, and therefore my recommendation would be that each person has their own wills to deal with the disposition of their estate. Don't leave it to intestacy, which is when you die without a will. Make the necessary arrangements. You have health insurance, you have life insurance, you have all of those things in place. A will is just one of the other requirements, I would say. And you don't have to be married for that either.
So who gets Vinny's engagement ring?
Well, traditionally, and the common law position in relation to an engagement ring is a gift with the promise of marriage. So if there's going to be no marriage, then the expectation is that the ring is returned. However, you know, some of us don't like that thing, you know, I feel we own this. I don't want to say no other girl with this, so yeah, keep it, right? Have some value because me don't go test it out after me get it in and realize that the diamond really real and it is really worth something, so it is worth something to me. Again, I think that is something that a couple can discuss. Yes, traditionally, it is a gift in contemplation of marriage, and therefore, if there is no marriage, the gift fails and should go back to where it came from. But it is something that people can discuss, because there are some men, they are not as hard and fast and dead set of saying, no, give me back or whatever it is. You can discuss it, and it probably can remain with the giftee.
Well,
at this time, it is a giftee and not a fiance.
and then the new fiance would ask Vinny to resize the ring. Ladies and gentlemen,
you know what? You can imagine you go somewhere and see the new girl with your
Vinny's
ring.
dying. We have come.
Vinny wants the opportunity to sell another ring, so you don't want to be passing around.
Absolutely. You know, we've come to the end of part one. You know, you now understand why it's part one. Join us part two. We'll advise of the date as, you know, by the time you get up tomorrow morning, you'll know the new date of our part two Lifestyles webinar, I Do, powered by Sagicor. Thank you very much, Elisa, for joining us today.
Brides and grooms, you are very welcome.
Thank you very much, Vinny Kapalani, the sales manager at Bijou. If you're going to return the ring, please don't expect Vinny to resize it. Buy another one. Shakima Hines, Managing Director, Shakima Hines, Events Concierge. Aisha Panton, Event Designer, Puss, Principal, Event Designer and Principal of Puss Backfoot. Oji Jaja, Executive Culinary Artist. Camille Flynn, Principal at Cake Couture. J.A. Carlton Brown, Bespoke Taylor, and Annalisa Lindsay, attorney at law, who has just not taken the magic out of the ceremony, but I think she's going to enhance people's expectations.
Loved it.
Right? And that's why she's on it, because several people called. Yeah, because
she's speaking, but we can't hear her.
We can hear. You know, several people did ask, how come you've got an attorney at law? This is why we have an attorney at law, as important as the engagement ring, as important as the wedding consultant, as important as Carlton telling the men to tuck in their big belly, right? So here we are. I'm Novia, delighted as always to, you know, to host these sessions, and of course to have you with us and join us for part two. We'll be back. Not too sure. Annalise is going to tell us then. But thank you very much again. Bye, and thank you to our amazing panelists. Couldn't have gotten better.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Buying a home? Score big with a Sagicor Bank mortgage. It's easy. Find your property. Apply for your Sagicor Bank mortgage. Get your keys in no time. And you're home. Get a competitive interest rate, a line of credit up to $2 million, which you can use for any purpose, including home renovation, purchasing new furniture, or maybe installing a solar power system, plus a special rate on home insurance. Score big with a Sagicor Bank mortgage. Apply for yours today. Call 888-SAGICOR.